I'll finish the run, but I won't time it because this is ridiculous. Okay, so, yeah, so for me with the arthritis in my hands, it's hard for me to, like, grip a controller like this, and it's also hard for me to keep my thumbs on the sticks. So, I don't actually have sticks in this setup that I have right now because they're expensive to get for the Xbox adaptive controller, and it was already very expensive as it is, but, so I've got this pad came with the Logitech buttons, and so it comes with these buttons that you see here, and then the pads to put them on because they Velcro to it. And then it also comes with these things to help you hold the wires in place. So I have it set up like this so that I don't have to grip something, and so that I don't have to move my fingers a long distance, because the other hardest thing about holding a controller is trying to use the trigger buttons. And so the problem I do have with the buttons that came with the Logitech kit, like, these are the trigger buttons. And so it's a very large pressing distance still. Which means that it's still a lot of stress on my fingers if I try to use these. So I don't even use these ones that came with it. Because I don't know how I would. That would just be really awkward. I'd have to, like, pick up my hand every time. So I don't have a good option for the trigger buttons right now. But there's a lot of, like, other people that make things that might work better for the triggers. I wish that you could just buy these switches on their own, because I really like these little round ones. But you can't just buy, like, a couple of them. And, I don't have a joystick yet, but you can get little joysticks to stick on here. But, like, I'm looking at a joystick, and the joystick itself will be, like, $50. I can buy an actual controller for $50. So this stuff adds up very fast, and I don't have a joystick yet. Because it's hard for me to keep my thumb on a joystick like this, but if I could control it with my finger, I might be able to do that. I don't know. And that's the other thing. I might be able to do it, and so spending $50 on a joystick that I might be able to use is just not something I want to do right now. But yeah, that's how I have it set up. So I use my palm on some of the buttons then, and my fingers. So then I can use, like, multiple fingers on the same button, like this one. And they require very little pressure, so it's not... The other problem I have with holding controllers is that I can't put enough pressure into the button press, because, especially older controllers are really stiff, and I just don't generate enough force. But even newer controllers, like I got... Before I went for this, I tried a current model Xbox controller, and I'm like, it's not taking my presses. Like, why is the controller not doing anything when I press buttons? And I gave it to Dean, and Dean had absolutely no problem with it. So it's just that I don't press with enough force every time. And these are really nice because they don't require much force at all. So yeah, that is the setup. And I hope it was helpful. Or interesting if it wasn't helpful. It's Raj. That's what I need. I need it to be Raj. Some people who use these setups show, like, a camera on their hands, but I also don't have another camera to show my hands. But, like, there's so many different things you can do with an adaptive controller. That's the thing. That's the cool thing about an adaptive controller is, like, there's infinite possibilities. So finding something that works for you is also really hard, because something that works for somebody else isn't necessarily what you need. Yeah, I do have the controller on the screen. There's no input display for adaptive controller. I did try that. I guess I could make one, but I'm not that good at making things like that, that's for sure. So I just use a regular Xbox controller, and it does, I mean, it translates generally to the shape. Actually, I could probably just put the camera on my hands right now so you can see. Like, I don't move my hands very much when I play. That was the whole point of this. Because, not clicked on the game. So it doesn't require me to, like, move my fingers a whole bunch, especially, like, move them to other buttons and do, like, weird positions with my hands. It did take some getting used to because I had to find ways to put, like, pinky buttons in places that wouldn't be super stressful on pinkies, because, like, your pinky isn't used to doing a lot of work. But this position has worked pretty well for me. I do avoid them when I can. Like, this hand doesn't even have a pinky button because it is an awkward thing to do. And the benefit of me running older games is that they don't need all of the buttons of modern controllers. Like, I don't have a shoulder button, or I don't have a trigger button on this right now. When I need a trigger button, if I don't need the other shoulder button, then a lot of times I'll just take these ones that I'm using for the camera right now with my thumbs, and I'll move them to the trigger thing. This is what the actual controller looks like. One sec. Camera. This is what the actual controller looks like. So, like, all of these wires actually wound them all up nice, but even like 2 weeks ago, this was a mess. This was an absolute mess. But each of these different plugs is already set to a different button. So, like, I can, and I do, like, when I play different games, like, if I just switch, like, the B and X, then it'll switch where it is on here. But sometimes it doesn't quite work right, and there is an Xbox program that lets you remap things, but it's kind of limited. Like, the thing that would be most useful for me would be able to, and this probably wouldn't be legal for speedruns, but it would be useful for me to be able to remap, like, digital to analog or analog to digital. That would be useful for just, like, casual playing, but it doesn't do that. It won't let me do that. So that's unfortunate, but it does do some of the remapping, the Xbox software. The stupid thing is that this controller, like this white thing, costs $100, and all it comes with is A, B, and the D-pad. So, like, yeah, not so useful. But that is my controller. And it's been working really well. I'm really happy that I got it because I was getting really frustrated. Like, I can play games casually on a regular controller, but once it gets to a speedrun and I have to make really precise movements, and it really matters that I make movement, like, fast and smoothly, then it became a really big problem. And I was just getting really frustrated with how clumsy I was and things. Yeah, and then, like, my hands would get stuck around controllers. Like, I wouldn't be able to unstick them from the controller. Like, that's not good either. And this has made it so that I can play it for a lot longer without it hurting. I still have problems with pain and stiffness. And that's just because I have arthritis. But this has helped a lot for me to be able to play longer. And with the skill that I actually can show instead of, like, what's limited by the controller. So yes, I'm really happy that I got this. I don't know what kinds of games you're playing, so if you need more of the buttons and stuff, you're gonna need, like, a stick and shoulder buttons and stuff. That probably will get more expensive. Because this was, like, 200 something, below 200s. Oh, PS2 and 3, yeah. And, actually, if you want to play on original consoles, you can... Probably even easier for PS3, actually. If you're playing on a PS3, I have this adapter, the Magic NS. I think you can actually just use this on a PS3. And if you're doing it on PS2, I did discover recently that, since this... So my first thing was trying to find... Before I even got the adaptive controller, I was trying to find something that I could use for the PS2, because a PS2 controller is so bad for me, for my hands. The buttons are stiff, the triggers are awful. It was so frustrating. So I got this that let me use other controllers on the PS2. But then I found out, because I just got this, to use it on the Switch. I just found out that this plus this means that I can also use an adaptive controller on a PS2. I haven't figured out if there's a lot of lag yet, so if you are thinking of doing that, I would be able to test that for you. But it is possible. It's just you have to do a bunch of adapters. Oh, foam behind the D-pad. Yes, I tried like patting my controller and stuff, and it just... But behind the D-pad. Yeah, it's frustrating. I contacted Able Gamers at one point too, but they have such a long waitlist that I actually haven't heard back from them about it. And at this point, I went to the adaptive controller, because like with the adaptive controller, you're like, it's gonna be like $200 or $300 to get this set up. Is it gonna be worth it? Will it really work? I got so frustrated, I was just like, fuck it, it might as well be better than this, right? And it was. I'm really glad I got it. And my partner wants one for himself just because it's nice for reducing strain on your hands. Like, why do we stress our hands so much? Controllers just aren't ideal for most people, especially competitive gamers. Everybody should have an adaptive controller, but they're so expensive that most people just wouldn't or can't or wouldn't even think of it. Alright, I was gonna continue. So I got all the dogs here. I'm gonna continue without the timer.